Hey, everybody. It's Andy here with the My Side of the Fence podcast. And I have with me today Sara Brescia, right?
Brescia is the Italian way to pronounce it, but it's a tomato situation. I'm raising my children to say Brescia because that is when you sound it out and spell it and you are using English pronunciation, that's what you say, but CIA in Italian is a ch sound. So Brescia is technically correct.
Well, there we go.
Tomato.
And you are a member of the school board, and you were elected not that long ago, right?
Yes, 2022.
Not like yesterday.
It wasn't yesterday. I am now a more senior status now that we have new people on the board. But,
right.
I'm still in my first term.
Right. There are new people. So we were chatting before the podcast started, and you said there was at least one thing you wanted to get off your chest. So go ahead and give it to them.
There have been persistent rumors floating around there for the 2026 cycle that I might be interested in running for city council.
Right.
And I can say definitively right here, this is Andy's exclusive scoop, that I am not running for city council in 2026. That my 2026 plans definitely do not include that.
Okay.
So hopefully that clears that up for everybody.
I hope so. It's, Facebook's going to believe what Facebook believes, right?
So.
And that can frequently be frustrating. But so we've got that. So tell everybody, where did you come from? Like, where did you grow up, and what was that like?
Where did I grow up? What was that like? All right. Well, I grew up in the Southwest Chicago suburbs in a community that's actually very similar to Manassas in a lot of ways. So it's a little bit funny. The more I think about it, the more I found my way home kind of accidentally. But I grew up in an area that was, largely a working class kind of identity, but a wide range of people. We had high income people, middle income people, working income people. Same kind of dynamic as exists out here, where a lot of the flooring companies, roofing companies, landscaping companies that worked in the higher income suburbs have their headquarters where I grew up. I actually grew up in a community that had a lot of non-English speakers in it. People do not always realize this, or people are usually surprised to hear that Chicago has one of the highest Polish populations.
Right, I did know that.
Yes, and so I grew up around a lot of households that did not speak English, and the other common languages were Arabic and Greek. There are large Arab and Greek populations where I grew up.
Arabic and Greek.
Yeah. So this is Southwest Chicago in the 90s and the early
like Polish, 2000s. I get.
Yes. Well, it's so I grew up in a community very much like Manassas, and I left to go to college in New York. And I went to college in New York, and I was doing pretty well in New York, even though it was the Great Recession, and the Great Recession had hit New York particularly hard.
Were you going to school in the city?
Yes, I went to school in the city. I went to Barnard College, which is actually the same college as Delegate Maldonado, so it's pretty funny.
Oh, wow.
I know. It's pretty funny that we have two elected officials from opposite political parties representing the same territory. So Barnard College, which is affiliated with Columbia University. And I had a job there. I had launched, was doing well there, and I wish I had a better story for this. I really do. But the truth of the story is, the guy I was dating, he got into Georgetown Law, and he was moving down to DC. And we had been together for 2 years. And I had to choose whether we were breaking up and I was staying in New York, or I was going to go to DC with him. So I decided to come down.
Well, after 2 years, it's getting serious.
Yeah, it's getting serious. And you're in your 20s. Like things are, there's a momentum there. So I moved down to this area, and then we broke up like a month later. So, as I said, I wish it was a better story, but, and then he ended up transferring to Fordham Law School. So he went back to New York. It was this like weird life detour that we took.
And you stayed down here.
And I stayed here. Yeah. I loved it here. So.
Yeah. Were you living in Washington at that point, or?
So I did live for a little bit in Washington, D.C. I got a room in a group house situation, which was, I love living with roommates. Actually, I think it was a lot of fun to do that. Yeah, some people hate that, but I've always thrived in that kind of environment. And I did meet my husband, and moved him settled in Virginia.
Right.
So when we were first together, we were in Arlington County, and that's where we lived up until 2019 when we moved out here.
Oh, wow.
And we came out here. We were actually tourists. We came to the Fall Jubilee, and we were walking around. And I had no idea. I had heard of Manassas, of course, from the Inner Beltway. Manassas carries us. Everybody knows about Manassas.
There's dirt roads out there.
Yes, right. The last frontier, the Wild West, Manassas.
It was.
And so he had been out here before, and he was like, they have this street festival. Why don't we go check it out? And we did. And I was like, this downtown is so cute. This festival is amazing. There is a hemp tent. There is an evangelical Christian tent. There is a Choose Islam tent. There's a brewery. There's it's
all there.
It was a little bit of everything. And it just felt so alive and diverse. And, I loved Arlington County. I loved living there, but it was very Beltway.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Very buttoned up.
Oh, yeah.
And, where here you can drive down Route 28 and there's a halal market and a gun store in the same, in the same shopping center. And
it's all here.
And it's all here. So it felt, we felt very instantly at home. We felt very excited about being here. We walked around the neighborhoods, surrounding Old Town, and we saw this house for sale. We weren't really, we knew that eventually we were going to need to leave Arlington County because we didn't have a spare $2 million lying around. Right.
That's a problem.
We didn't have a spare $2 million to start a proper life out there.
Right.
So we were like, oh, well, maybe let's walk around, let's see. And we walked by a house and we're like, oh, well, that house is for sale. I mean, what's the harm in touring it? There's no harm in just touring it and seeing what the market is. And, I guess there's no harm if we submit an offer and see what happens from there. Our offer's accepted. Oh, I guess we're moving. All right, let's go. So it was actually a bit of an impulsive decision, but we fell in love with it. I love it. I love it here still. I'm so happy.
Wow, that's fantastic.
That we ended up here.
That's fantastic. I mean, you move after just like that impulsive of a decision, and you're like, this is kicking ass. We're really enjoying it.
Well, and in the stew of that decision making, we were a little suspicious at first because we were like, here's this house. It's a historic home. It's on LeBeau Row. Those little historic townhouse things on Portner Avenue between Grant and West, and very cute houses. Mm-hmm. Our house had been completely redone on the inside in the early 2000s. So it wasn't even, sometimes you buy an old house and there's only one outlet in the entire living room and there's all these other things. But, it had all of the modern upgrades and, conveniences. And and this would be so close to a downtown, in Old Town Alexandria, it'd be like a $2.5 million house, right? It would be, and we were like, why? But we can afford it. What's the catch? Why can we, I know it's Manassas and it's farther away from the
city.
From the city. So obviously there's a discount for that reason, but gosh, what is it? And we're doing our research on the area, and then we went on, greatschools.org. We're like, oh, that's part of the problem. This is part of why.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
And it actually was something because our oldest was already born at that point. We knew that we wanted more kids. Is this going to be a problem for us? Should we not? Should we, try to find something on the county side of the line?
Yeah.
If we were, going to be all the way out here to start with. And we, and at the time making this calculation, it's just we can make whatever, let's move, let's talk to people, because a lot of times, and we're fairly savvy consumers, we're people who think about the world and know that niche.com and greatschools.org, they don't always capture the full picture of what's going on. And so we figured that we'd get here and what we were hoping to hear when we got here, when we started asking around, was something like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, the schools, we are all really invested in their success and, but your kids will do well there. And we trust the schools to be doing their best and be doing what's best. And, you can send your kids to the public schools without a problem. That's what we were hoping to hear.
Right.
That's not what we heard. That's not what we heard when we arrived. So, and that's just the truth of that, how that went. But we were hoping it was kind of a leap of faith. Like, okay, yeah, the scores are low, but but there's so much more that goes into a successful public school system that we'd be willing to either give it a chance. And we did have the flexibility by the virtue of our jobs and station in life that if we really needed to do something else like homeschool or private school,
right,
we really could, stop taking vacations and do that. But that was our plan. Or plan A was, we hope we go out here and we hope we hear, we get a sense of a strong community investment in the schools that, and that we hope that we hear a plan for the schools. We were hoping that we see leadership. We were hoping for all of these things. And that is,
that's not the case.
That's not what we...
Yeah, it's interesting. My daughter graduated from Osborne in 2015. And if you would have asked me then, like, can you send your kids to the public schools? And, as long as your parents are traditionally involved in the education and making sure the kids do their homework and stuff like that, can you be successful? I would have said yes. Mm-hmm. But, that we only have one kid. She graduated in 2015. And, based on what I hear from you and a lot of other folks, that doesn't seem like it's as much the case probably anymore.
Well, here's the thing. I think the schools here, and I obviously I'm very embedded in this. I'm very invested in this. I ask pretty much everyone I meet on the street, what do you think? And where do we need to go? And the sense that I have of the history here, and maybe I'm totally off base because I'm a fairly recent arrival. I only got here in 2019 myself, but I feel there were a lot of things that shocked not just the school system itself, but shocked the community all at the same time, which was the Great Recession came rolling through. And this was a drive to qualify kind of a situation where the bubble was particularly big. Home values took a particularly large hit here. Yeah. And I can see, I can see it even just looking through the transaction history on the houses in my neighborhood, like what they were valued. My neighbors who were unlucky enough to have bought their homes in 2007, what they paid versus what Zillow says they're worth even now. Like they've only just now kind of caught up. So it is, what a shock that was. What a shock that was to everybody. And then at the same time, the student population was changing. There was a student population that required greater need, because English was not a lot of folks' first language. So not only are you facing this like cultural transition of, okay, we have students who are coming in who need more help, but there's no money. There's no money to do it with. And so it must have been very difficult for the leaders in that position to see this happening. And I've actually heard you, Andy, talk about this, 2 terms that I'm done. I came on the council to do things. And
That's right.
And you can't do things when there's no money, right? And I feel like there is something that took hold over our civic life at that time where it's like, well, it must be hopeless because,
Well, yeah, I mean, during the Great Recession, so before the Great Recession, we got some pretty interesting stuff done. Mm-hmm. But I feel like between the dramatic demographic changes from, 2004 on, and then the Great Recession, it really did take the wind out of everybody's sails.
Yeah.
I remember vividly voting on the budget that year. Mm-hmm. And, that final vote is right there in the council chambers. All those people out there, I knew them. City staff's, I think, a lot smaller then. And, I knew them, and they watched me vote to put them in the unemployment line. Yeah. That was not a lot of fun, but I had to do it.
Right.
But it did kind of take the collective wind out of the sails of them.
Right. And I think, the schools are an interesting, I feel like the city was perhaps able to recover from this a little bit, once the revenues rebuilt and all this other kind of stuff, because, well, people still live here. They're still invested in what's going to happen to Battle Street, or are we going to build a pavilion? Like, people are still naturally invested in that just by the virtue of where they live. The schools are, whether or not you're invested in the schools is somewhat optional, right? Like, do you have kids in the, do you have school age kids, which, most voters do not. Most voters are older. Most of their kids are launched.
Right.
Do you have school age kids? And if you do, you don't necessarily need to send them to Manassas City Public Schools. You can homeschool homeschool them. You can send them to private school. You can pay tuition and send them to the county, right? You can, or do what some people do, which you are not supposed to do, which is find an uncle or something, and register your child through on the other side of the line. Like there are whether or not the civic life is invested in, whether or not you as a citizen or resident of the city of Manassas is invested in the schools is, people can opt out of that, I think, and a lot of people did opt out.
100%. One of the trends that I noticed, I live about a block from you.
Yes.
And one of the trends that I noticed is a lot of the larger historical houses are being purchased, maybe some remodeled or whatever, by families who they plan for their children to attend the Catholic schools,
right.
Or a private school.
Right.
They're not going
right. Well,
to
and
schools.
you read in you read in civics and things like that, the virtuous cycle, right? And we are not in a virtuous cycle right now, right? Like we're in a cycle where people look at the scores, and not everybody is as brave, intrepid, and impulsive as my husband and I. A lot of people look that up and say, "Oh, too risky. No thanks. Let's go somewhere else." Or if we go here, let's make, or if we do live here, let's make other plans. And it is so part of me deciding to run was in 2019, moving here and I'm an outgoing person. I'll walk up to people on the playground and be like, "Can you tell me about these public schools? Can you tell me what's going on here?" Because the other thing, and if you come to get to know me as a person, is I hate when things do not make sense. And it did not make sense to me. Like when I was here, and I'm like, here I am. Manassas City has a median income of something like $110,000 a year. Like we are not actually we're not a low income city. And we're a working class city, but we are not a low income city. And here I am in a beautiful neighborhood, and the school buses just drive right past. They're right there. No one's making any stops. Everyone's just driving right past me.
No.
And what is it about it that we seem to have it didn't make sense to me what the community looked like in terms of its socioeconomic makeup in total, and then what was going on with the schools with its scores. And then you look across the line, you look in Manassas Park, you look at the Manassas schools in Prince William County. Not that all of them are shining beacons of hope, but many of them, but many of them do better than us, serving a very similar demographic.
Well, Manassas Park.
Right. And you look over at Osborne Park, and Osborne Park is probably Osborne Park is actually a really good example, because Osborne Park does serve a low-income community, but the middle to high-income, homes that surround Manassas Osborne Park also utilize Osborne Park. And what Manassas City is a diverse, economically, racially, linguistically, ethnically diverse community, where if we were all bought into the success of the public schools, it would be a completely different
I couldn't agree with you more. One of the things that I always complained about was like every family that opts out, they still live in the community, but they're not I don't want to say they're not invested, but they're not invested in the schools, and it kind of just removes them from visibility, because their life is they take their kid to Osborne Park or wherever they're going to take them, and their money goes to Osborne Park fundraisers, their time goes to Osborne Park meeting with the teachers and stuff like that, and there's any number of people in our community, just in the Old Town community, who send their kids to county schools.
And I want to be perfectly clear here. Everybody who chooses to do that makes a rational decision based on.
I'm not throwing rocks.
I'm not. I don't want to sound in my own remarks judgmental of that at all, because your own kids are number one. And in fact,
that's right.
Myself running for school board in 2022, I had a 4-year-old. I had not even been in the public schools yet, so I was like, I sure hope this goes well. This is going to be really embarrassing if I win a seat on school board, and then it turns out my child has a terrible experience in school, because my kids are number one. If they are not having a good experience, then
change.
Then I'm just going to have to change it for them. And that would be embarrassing to me as a public figure, but that would just need to be what it is. And I'm proud to report we're through 2nd grade right now. We're having a great time. So I have not had to do that at all. I mean, I really have been very, very pleased.
I'm not throwing rocks at those people that make that decision or the ones that want to homeschool. Lord knows, I don't know how people homeschool. I couldn't. There's a zero chance. Like it was.
You have to be a highly structured individual.
That's not my middle name.
That didn't fit my MO either. So it was.
But you just have to make those decisions, and it's tough because no one is rooting against the schools. They're central to the community's success. And I saw somewhere, I think on social media today, that the city has a plan for improving the schools or something. Now that may have been an inartful.
The city has a plan. Well, fascinating.
I admit to not having clicked and read on the article because I'm at work. But it's going to take. I think it's going to take both bodies working together to make it go.
And there's some element of. I agree with that, yes, especially since schools and school boards in Virginia, unlike other states, they have no independent fundraising, funding authority.
Right.
Like we cannot add a penny to the property tax.
I mean, that's built into the IMHO of Virginia government.
Just in general. So we have no choice. The city council and the school board, we are locked in together because we count on them to include us in their strategic decision making about the other needs that the city faces. So, we have to work together. Part of what, and we have to build trust together. And I understand that there has been some more distant history where money was allocated to the schools and then it was used on something else. And, those kind of things are.
I can neither confirm or deny that, but I do know the answer.
Okay. So, I mean, I just got here in 2019, so I just know what I've been told, but it is. There is a trust element. There's a communication element that I've been really trying to work on, just in my individual capacity. Like I have my newsletter that I send out so that people understand our decision making. People don't really want to watch our meetings. Like they're great meetings. No. You should watch them, but almost nobody does. You can look at the viewership that, we get on our YouTube versus what I know the city is getting there, and it is just
night and day.
We're just in the minor leagues of viewership. That's just the reality of it. So how do you get it? How do you get more of the information out there? One thing that we are going to be talking about shortly is incorporating into our budget presentation process, the returns on investment, because the city will make these allocations. And we have never in our budget process before talked about, well, what happened after that? You funded, one example that one example that is very concrete and recent is that the city has given us some compensation infusions to allow us to catch up to our neighbors, compensation wise. Yeah. Well, they did that, and our retention rate has gone up. We now have an 86% compensation retention rate, where before that was 80%.
Right.
So this is very concrete. You make an investment in compensation, and people decide to stay.
Turnover is expensive.
Turnover is expensive, right? So things like that. Before I got on the board, they added the family liaison positions. They added 9 positions, which is that's a lot of positions.
Yeah.
And
what do those guys do?
Well, it's right there in the title. They're our family liaisons. They work not just with our students, but with the entire family to make sure that the family is healthy and on track and doing
like
well.
Kids that are chronically truant, or
I mean, they work with our they work with our kids who struggle with attendance, and serving as in some cases a cultural translation between maybe you were used to this, but here we do this, or the expectation is this, or making sure that the home and school connection is solid. I know our liaisons spend a good amount of their time helping families just get set up for Power School, and making sure that all of the information that you're signed up for the platforms that you need to be signed up for as a parent to know how your child is doing.
And that's kind of central these days, isn't it? Power School.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I got a new phone at some point, and it was a whole it was like a whole thing for for a college educated
Right.
English speaking person myself to get that back up and running.
Right.
Because there's a lot of it's not easy on purpose because you have to really protect your students' privacy and all this other kind of stuff.
Sure, that
But
makes sense.
it is so a lot of time on that, making sure that home family and home bridge is solid, because if the family doesn't understand what's happening at school, the school doesn't understand what's happening at home, it makes it hard to.
So they work with the out in the family home or whatever.
Yeah, they'll do home visits. Yeah, and they participate in various community events. If there is, if Georgetown South has a Georgetown South event, then you will see our family liaisons from the elementaries and Metz and Osborne. Right. They'll have little tents there to introduce themselves and make sure everybody knows their names and knows that they can be an accessible point of contact. But one thing that is concrete about that program is that the Manassas City Public Schools has the Parents as Educational Partners program. And it has been hard to try to find a home for that program. It had lived under various other departments before. Are we doing it school-based? Is it division-based? All this other kind of stuff. Putting it under the family liaisons has meant that attendance at that program has gone up. So, this is...
So it seems like it's working.
So it seems like it's working, right? But we should be out there and talking about how investments translate into success, and we should be thinking about that too, because not every investment is going to lead to something successful, and we can't be afraid if we're not measuring the success, if we're not seeing the success we expected, to be like, oh well, look at that, we have to pivot, and we're fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah,
we have to do something different. So one thing that I like to ask people, and I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot or not, but does the school board have like a plan, like an overarching plan? Like, here's the things that we're going to do for the next 5 years to try and make the schools better.
Yes. We do have a strategic plan. We do.
Can you send me a link to it?
Yes.
I mean, I'd love to read it. I'm not
find it on our website. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just check it out.
I did bring my computer here in part for reasons like this, but
I can find it.
I want to open my computer anyway. We do have a strategic plan, and part of what I think we need to do a little bit better at is communicating. Yes, there is a plan. Part of Sarah, the young mom, deciding to run for office was. So one thing I neglected to mention in where did I grow up? How did I grow up? I grew up in a civically engaged household. My grandfather ran for mayor.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I come by this madness, honestly. My mother was involved in various bond campaigns in Illinois. If you want to do a major capital project, you have to have that separately voted on. My poor mom wanted to get that library renovated, and finally, the library bond campaign was successful, but unfortunately, I was like a junior in high school, and it was, and our time at the public library was over. But it was, she was in. We had T-shirts, and I remember holding signs as a kid and being out there waving like, "We'll build our library."
Right. We need a library.
We need a library, or a new. We had one, but it was. Small, and it's beautiful now. I have gone I have seen the rebuilt library, and it would have been nice if that had passed a little bit sooner, but it is what it is. But the part of why I decided that I needed to run for school board was I'm the kind of person who knows, well, you can always watch school board meetings and see what's going on there. And I started tuning into school board meetings, and I was frustrated. I didn't see a lot of leadership from the elected leaders who were on the dais at that time, which is just, I have come to know people, and I respect them, and I understand where they're coming, where each of their motivations are, and all that kind of good stuff. And I know that everybody has great and good intention, but there was definitely a culture of, we don't say anything, or we don't do anything. It just didn't inspire confidence in me as a parent I was really ready to be inspired. I was really ready to tune in and feel like, okay, I'm in good hands. And that is not what I was feeling at all.
The school board, I don't want to be uncharitable, but there, at one point I heard somebody describe it as less than the sum of its parts, which, like I said, is kind of uncharitable because none of the people that when I served on council, I wouldn't characterize any of my counterparts on the school board like that. I mean, they were dedicated people.
Right. Well, and this is what makes it kind of difficult. I understand this now, now that I have been here longer, right? Like there is a defensiveness that kind of kicks in about it, which is, and I think really took hold during the Great Recession when there was, a lot of changes happening demographically and not a lot of ability to effectively address. And then also just like the culture clash of this being a small southern town and, now we are turning into a cosmopolitan urban environment, right? Like that's just, and that cultural transition that was happening there.
It's painful.
Yes. And I understand, I absolutely understand being defensive because, now that I am a schools parent and, and invested in the schools community and have worked closely with so many of our school staff, there is a part of me where my head starts to throb, like, how dare you say something bad about these wonderful people who do so, who put all of themselves into their jobs every day. And actually we just had our data presentation, about the SOL results from last school year are out. And I actually addressed this on the dais was, in some ways my job, it has gotten harder to do my job as as part of the oversight body because now I know so well so many of the people who are putting so much into it. And I'm going to kind of spotlight special education, right? I have two of my children are special education students. My kindergartner she just has an IEP for speech, but my oldest daughter is actually, she has a genetic condition and she has a bunch of like kind of other things going on.
Right.
And so I have, personal interactions with the SPED department. And I am the school board's liaison to the Special Education Advisory Committee, so I've come to know everybody that way. So here I see a really dedicated, wonderful group of professionals who choose every day to show up and do it. But yet I see on my data that our special ed students lag the state's special ed student average by 16 points.
Right.
And both of these things can be true at the same time. And just because and you need to be strategic and you need to be strategic and constructive, but you cannot be afraid to say, okay, we are lagging the state average by 16 points. So what can we do better? How can we
don't hide from it?
Don't hide from it. Like, in our recent data report, are probably the single worst data point was our 7th grade math test takers at Metz Middle School, only 20% of whom pass the test. And that is a true fact, right? That's true.
I read it in some linked document from somebody's page.
Right. But what is also true is that Hayden Elementary School improved in every category by 5 points or more. That's also true. It's also true that Dean 4th grade math improved by 30 points. It's also true that Weems math improved by something like 24 points. Like
right.
Those are that math at Osborne improved by 10 points, right? Like all of those, these things are all true. And, and we cannot, people do not trust their leaders if they're not willing to acknowledge both of those things. There has been such, I think, a historic shyness to zoom in on the places where we need to be making improvements, which has contributed to a deficit of trust that I think the community has for their school leaders. Like all you want to talk about are double-digit gains, but I have a 7th grader at Metz. Can you please talk to me about math? Right. Like I'm worried, and it's legit.
I think that's true, but I think it's also long running. This is not a recent phenomenon. When I served for a number of years on the board of a school for autistic children. And my takeaway from that is it's complicated. There's lots of, beyond just like before you even get to interacting with the children, the regulatory stuff you have to deal with.
There is. Yes, there is.
It's a pile of work, right? And so, it's complicated. And, that was my takeaway from school board members over the years is that it's complicated. Well, I want to talk about test scores. Well, we want to talk about we need more money because the governor now has said we have to teach financial literacy. Well, right. I get that, but I want to talk about test scores. Well, we need more money. And that was kind of the back and forth. And you can substitute what everyone wants to talk about, but I think a lot of times the bodies end up talking past each other.
Yes, and yes, talking past each other. And I think without I think we, the schools, could. I think we're getting better at this, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, I think this has already improved a lot, even over the, and not giving myself credit for this, but, giving both bodies, both bodies have recognized this is a, this is a problem and we need to work on it. And let's try these joint meeting things. And, so we are doing more joint meetings now. We, the schools, learned we should do a pre-meeting before the joint meeting so we can all, right? And we had to kind of learn that the hard way to do that. But so doing that has gotten us to a point now where our joint meetings are a little bit more productive and understanding, and where we can, one thing that is always going to be, one area of high conflict that we had somewhat recently was the old Dean building, where the city council decided right away they wanted us to knock it down, and we had not really completed a process of whether we can use it for anything, because we do have various square footage needs that and we have we're buying 8700 Centerville now to address those square footage needs, but at the time we were having the conversation about the Dean building, we had been denied purchasing 8700, and we want you. You're going to knock it down. Not we want you to. Not please. Not, it's our building. Okay. And so there was a bristle there between the two bodies, and now we've gone through our process. And there was no threat that you're going to end up at the police station. The old police station. The old police station. Well, I mean, sure, but you'd have to give us $11 million to do that. Right. So I don't understand. We could do, and by the way, $11 million to renovate it, and then we would fill that building up from day one. There wouldn't be any room for expansion. I mean, so the purchase of 8,700 to me, and this is somebody who does come from a fiscally conservative philosophy and background, is, okay, you purchase 8,700. You don't have to pay $11 million to renovate a building that will be too small for you in 5 years anyway, which would have been the alternative with the police station. You stop paying rent. So it's about $1 million that you save not paying rent. You start collecting rent from your existing tenants, which is a revenue positive thing. You can control the tenants now, because right now we cannot control the tenants. And if they want to put a tattoo parlor right next to our, pre-K interview suite, there's nothing we could do about that. Right. So it is, so for me, it made sense. And also because we needed a place for our alternative education program, which, you hear in the community and is a deficit. It is a room for improvement that has been long noted from Manassas City Public Schools, that we need to improve our, kind of our behavioral matrix, our discipline philosophy, and alternative schooling is one way to do that, where you take kids who are really, really not thriving in a traditional environment, and you take them out of that traditional environment for a period of time. You put them in an alternative environment where they get more attention, where they get more, not just academic instruction, but more explicit instruction in how you are expected to behave. And
does that start this year?
It will start as soon as possible. I don't know. We keep hopefully January, but there are a lot of things that we have to get a special use permit approved by the city. The building purchase itself has to go through. We have to order furniture. We have to modify the suite. There are things that have to be done to get there, but everybody's moving as fast as we can with that. Yeah,
I was chatting with some folks I know that work in the schools, and they seem optimistic about the prospects for that program. Yeah. And I mean, if their expectations pan out, seems like it might be a victim of its own success, which wouldn't be a horrible thing. You'd have to make it bigger.
Well, I mean, we are maintaining, I think this is something that gets a little bit lost. We are maintaining our relationship with Independence Nontraditional School, which is the alternative program in Prince William County. So so it's not that we are just that we're starting this, and this is going to be the end all be all of alternative offerings for Manassas City students. Like, this is going to pretty much double our capacity as it is. So it is something, and also students do not stay in alternative education settings long term. This is something
so like a year or something.
A semester if it's possible, or a year. Yes, like it depends on the progress of the student and what people are and how the staff and families and everybody are feeling about the student moving back into their traditional setting. But this is not supposed to be a situation where once you have a seat, you have it for 3 or 4 years. Like once you have a seat, you have it for a period of time. And it's a very intense process of, you're meeting with a psychologist, you're meeting with a counselor, you're meeting with, we're trying to address your up to down needs to, ensure that you can be more successful. And then back you go to your traditional program, hopefully as a reformed individual. But it is I'm not going to say, you never say never to something like that. If we ever do come to an assessment and decide we need to expand the seats, then we need to expand the seats. But the programs, to be successful, the programs need to be small because the kids, by definition, need a lot of attention.
Yeah. So people out there will kill me if I don't ask you about like the grading policy and stuff like that. And, it may not be something that...
I like talking about this. That makes some of my colleagues get a little uncomfortable about it, but I think it is.
So currently, though, the minimum grade you receive is 50?
Yes, regardless of whether you attempt an assignment or not, you receive you receive the number 50 in your grade book.
Right.
And it is something, and this was something that was popular in the pandemic era. Fauquier County put in a very similar policy for the 21-22, the last 6 months of the 21-22 school year. They stopped it. They're like, no.
Is that right?
Yes. They said 22-23, we're back to normal. We're not going to do this anymore.
Right.
Fairfax County eliminated zeros. They reinstated the zero for this school year. So the way Fairfax County's grading works is that it is 50 to 100 if you attempt the assignment. So if you attempt it and you don't know and you get all the questions wrong and you quote unquote earn a zero, then your grade is moved up to a 50 and you're given an opportunity to reattempt it but if you do not attempt an assignment at all in Fairfax County after 2 weeks, it's logged in the grade book as a zero. Loudoun County never eliminated the zero completely. They have their policy states that the grade scale is 50 to 100. Although if student work is not attempted or there is persistent missed work, students may enter a grade of less than 50 after a phone call home. So they never got rid of it completely.
Right.
Teachers always had a way to enter zero into the grade book if they, if they could basically justify it and then call the families.
Right.
Montgomery County Public Schools over in Maryland briefly had no zeros, but they too reinstated it. So it is, as far as I can tell, it's just us. And it's possible, if somebody has something out there, I know that actually Kansas City Public Schools is going to try no zeros for the first time next school year, which is interesting. God bless you, Kansas City. I'll follow you closely. Right. And they're starting at a grade of 40 for some reason. I don't know. But the trend has been that this is on the way out. And I think that it is, first of all, I will say, I think people kind of misunderstand me when I talk about this. Like, I do not think changing this grading policy is a silver bullet. Like, I do not think that, once this policy is lifted, all of a sudden everything is fixed. No, but I think that our growth is limited as long as this policy is in effect, because students just engage with their schooling differently when they know that any given assignment that they can be pickier and choosier with their assignments. So I'm married to a man. My husband, he was a bit of an underachiever in high school. It took him a little bit to mature and realize his potential. And he was the kind of kid who calculated, all right, well, my parents will not yell at me if I get a B. So how much can I get away with not turning in? I'll sit there and I'll game that out. So I've had, teachers have shown me at Osborne have shown me their grade books. Be like, these kids were all present. Here's all these 50s. These kids were present in class that day. They just didn't do it because they can show me their power school, and not doing it means that they still have a 70 in the course. So it is. So I think it hurts our student engagement. And there is no such, the other caveat I'll put out there, there's no such thing as a perfect grading policy, right? If there was a perfect grading policy, everybody would just do that. So what set of trade-offs are you comfortable with? Are you comfortable with a set of trade-offs that, I think that it is an unacceptable trade-off to have a system where kids are disincentivized from doing their daily work. Right? Yeah. But the proponents of the policy will say, well, now you are discouraging kids. Like if you get a 0, it cuts your average in half, right? So if you previously had 100 in the course and then you get a 0, 100 for your homework, and then you get a 0 for one of your homeworks, now your homework average is 50 instead of, right. It's right. But then kids get, I'm saying,
well, you got to.
I'm with you.
But you got to work to average it back up.
Right.
I mean, and that's the way it works.
And I think that there is a lot that goes into it. I trust the intention of the people who.
I understand the idea.
Right. I trust the intention. I think two things can be true, as I said earlier. As I said a little bit ago, that you can be. Well-intended, but it's still a wrong thing to do. Right. And I think that that whatever the technical details of the policy, for better or for worse, we are now in a situation where the policy has become symbolic and part of the tug of war in Manassas City Public Schools over what kind of system we are and what kind of system we're going to be. Right. Because if you went and asked, people in our school leadership and our school administration, if you went now, you asked individual board members, do you want or do you have a high expectation system? Of course, people are going to say, yes, it's a high expectation system. But it's one thing to say it and another thing to do it. You can't just say, you must also do. And I think that as long as this policy is on the books, that any other efforts that we make to try to impact a cultural shift in Manassas City Public Schools to become an achieving district is going to be limited. And it's a little bit unfortunate because it is a kind of a technical. It is kind of a technical thing with a lot of inputs. Like it's not just 0 to 100 or 50 to 100 or what. It's how you weight the grades. It's, our pluses and minuses. An A plus worth more in your GPA than an A minus. Like it's, right. There's a lot of other, where do you cut the, at Seton School, and whenever I run into a Seton family, they always very proudly say below, 92 and below is a B.
That used to be the city.
Right. 93 to 100 is an A. Giving them 90 is an A kind of thing. No. At 90, if we start at 93, right? So where you cut that, what you do with your deadlines, what you do with late work, there's actually a lot of inputs. And I think that if this had not become a kind of a political flashpoint, and I contribute to that. That's on me. Sorry, everybody. But if it had not become a political flashpoint, I think that we naturally would have readdressed it the same way that Fairfax readdressed it, the same way that Montgomery County readdressed it, the same way that Fauquier readdressed it, right? I think we would have had a natural progression led by the administration to, okay, we need to take another look at it because we're out of the immediate danger. But now we are in this political struggle that in many ways is unhelpful, but it is still, if I could rerun my race in 2022, there's quite a bit that I would do differently, understanding the civic life of Manassas City a little bit better, and which is just kind of learning curve for being being new in town. Yeah. But it is, I do wish that we could turn the temperature down on it, because I do think that if we went through a process of studying it sincerely, that we would find that in this post-pandemic era, that it no longer is serving our kids. I really think that if we could all just calm down and look at it, that it would be that we could get to a solution. And I heard you say this before, that no one really likes.
Oh, that's exactly right.
Right.
Then you have a good solution. But
have a good solution.
The one thing that I hear, and I see comments on social media like everybody else, and without getting too far into the old guy screaming at kids to stay the hell off my lawn. I do. The one that I read that resonates with me is that, like, I understand the idea, but this is not the way the real world works. Mm-hmm. If you have a job and you just elect not to do your work, you lose your job. And I think I agree with the notion, and that may be a bit of you kids stay off my lawn, but I agree with the notion that it sets sort of the wrong expectation in the kids going forward.
Yes. Well, I will say that we have, our expectations have evolved in other ways in Manassas City. Our attendance expectations have evolved. We've communicated that. People have faced consequences for not following that. And our attendance rates have, for the most part, gotten much, much better. Yeah. Osborne's attendance improved, but it is still very high, still over 30%. So it is. Really? Yes.
That's a lot.
Well, and I think that we do have an issue, and I think the grading policy contributes to it, where when you have your free will, and especially if you have a set of wheels, right. You can check your own power school and be like, okay, if I don't go today, I still have a 70. If I don't go today, I still have an 80, right? You can be pickier and choosier about when it impacts our student engagement. Or another great example, one really great and wonderful thing that has happened at Osborne is that the new principal, Dr. Chapman, has put in a set of tardy protocols. So if you are late to class after a certain amount of time, you have to serve a lunch detention. If you are late to class after a certain amount of time after that, you have to serve an after-school detention. And the process is clear. You walk through Osborne, they've got posters and flyers all over the place. Like, right. This is what's going to happen if this is what you do. And do you know what I saw not yesterday, but the day before, driving my kids to Baldwin Elementary? I saw a young scholar running down Main Street, trying to get into the door on time. I've never seen that before. Right. But this young man has assimilated to the expectation. He does not want that lunch detention, or he does not want that after school detention. So he is booking it, trying to get in the door on time.
Well, I mean, that's good.
And so you'll notice that this was 2 days ago. I went to lunch in Old Town, and I was like, let me take a walk behind the Manassas Museum, because that was another inciting incident for me running for school board, was trying to bring my young children to play at that playground and having it be overrun with, truly just like a dozen teenagers or more, like, so truly just covered with kids who should be in school.
Right.
And then at one point we called Osborne, a group of us moms, we called Osborne to be like, is it an open campus? Like, what's happening here?
Right.
And the person who answered the phone was not polite to us. And so that was, also, that went around the mom groups like a cannonball. They don't even care. Yeah. What? And I, like I said, I have no idea who answered the phone, and the person probably didn't even give it a second thought. I've got other things to deal with. Who's this random person calling me? Right. But it was, there is something to be said about how you communicate with the community, and that was the wrong way, because we were all became extremely motivated. Okay, Sara for school board. Right.
What did push you to run for school board?
Well, it was a mix of things. It was moving here with a set of hope and expectations that was not being met. It was me being a person who's naturally bothered by things who don't make sense and wanting to get to the bottom of it. It was going to vote in 2019, which was a special election between Peter O'Hanlon and Lisa Stevens. Right. And we had moved in October. And so I show up in November, and I knew there were going to be people outside the doors. There always are. And so I walked up to one of the tables, and I was like, I just moved and I missed the campaign. So what's going on for school board? I don't know. And the person who I spoke to was there for Peter O'Hanlon. She was a Peter O'Hanlon friend or volunteer. And she said, Well, Peter O'Hanlon is an involved parent, and Lisa Stevens is a teacher, and I'm friends with Peter, so I'm here supporting Peter. And I was like, okay, but like,
right. What's the policy?
What's the difference?
Yeah.
What does one want to do that versus the other? And this person looked at me, and she was just like, well, she's a teacher and he's a parent. And I'm like, okay. Like that was really distressing to me that she could not articulate what the difference between the candidates were. And so I left it blank. I went in 2019 and I filled out the rest of my ballot. I'm like, I'm not participating in a small town popularity contest. Like I don't, I want to vote on direction, leadership, policy, vision. I don't want to vote on, well, I know the guy and he's nice, or and who knows, maybe history would have been different if I had run into Lisa or if I had run into, someone working for her, but that's just how that conversation went. And so that was depressing to me. And then I went to vote in 2020 and there are 4 school board slots available and only 3 candidates.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at this like, well, this city has given up.
Yeah.
You can't even get 4 candidates. Like, this is a city that's given up on its kids. I was so mad to see that. It's like you're expecting me to put my kids in a school where we can't even where nobody wants to step forward and lead.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What? And I had no, and I was not. I know there was a Christina Brooks write-in like mini campaign that missed me completely. Like I saw. There was no one in front of my polling place when I went to vote, and nobody came to my door. So I don't know. Who knows? Maybe history would have been different if I had known that there had been a little, like, mini campaign that was going on for that 4th seat. But from me sitting there and voting, being like, the city has given up. I cannot. What a blow that was. And then in June of 2022, I'm at the First Friday with a friend of mine. And Stephen Kent is walking around First Friday trying to get signatures for his wife, Mel Kent, to get on the ballot. And it's funny because he started to approach my friend first and she turned her back. And so he pivoted off, ricocheted off of her and came to me. It's like, my wife's trying to get on the ballot for school board. Can you sign her petition? And I'll sign anybody's petition. Let this be out in the record. Anybody who's running for anything, I'll sign that petition because that is just a real pain in the butt. And so I went and I signed the petition and I start talking to him, so please tell me, because I've been watching board meetings at this point. Please tell me so she's running to challenge. That's great. I love that. I'm already inclined to her because she is challenging. Who else is running? And he was like, well, the 3 incumbents are running for re-election and there are 2 challengers. I go home to my husband and I was like, only 2? It's happening again. Like, I cannot believe that there are not 3, especially in 2022, right? Like there had been so much with the pandemic and all this other kind of stuff, and the not just our schools, but all schools were really in a crisis catch-up mode. Where
they really were.
Where leadership was desperately needed. I was like, there's only 2. There's only 2 people willing to step forward and articulate a set of of grievances and articulate a set of alternatives. Right. I cannot believe that. And I was texting with a friend of mine from Arlington. Can you believe it? And she had been, and we are friends. So she had known about 2019 and 2020, and she had been teasing us about save up for private school, blah, 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 blah. Like all this, because we had gotten a lot of grief from our Arlington friends for, moving to the Wild West out here.
Sure.
And, I was like, I can't believe there's not a third. I can't believe there's not a third. And I remember it distinctly. I was in line waiting to check out at Walmart. And she texted me, Sarah, I know someone who could run for school board, and I think you should do it. And I got that text message, and I was like, with like dawning horror.
Right.
I know you're right. Like, I know you're right. I know I could do it, and I know I should do it. And I did.
And you did, and you won.
And I won.
Yeah, it's running for office is no mean feat. I mean, when I ran, it was a lot different. The number of voters was much smaller, but the electorate that elected to participate was
more informed,
way more informed.
Yeah.
Yes. It would not be unusual for someone to come up with you when I was working the polls and I was running, and ask me questions about particular policies. Well, what do you think about the city doing A, B, or C? Oh, well, since I've been knocking doors for 3 months, I know exactly what I think because 4 other people asked me. But it has really changed. The move to November has really changed the makeup of the electorate. It's the odd Republican that can get elected in Manassas.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. Because I feel like a lot of people that vote in November know little to nothing about city issues and policies.
Yeah. I mean, it is a, you can definitely, I mean, I've never been here for a May election.
Right.
But I was telling you earlier, in Illinois, it's May elections for school boards. I actually have a cousin in Illinois who is serving on a school board right now, and talking with him, it's very funny. Like his social media presence is like nothing. And I'm sitting here being like, I need to teach myself how to edit videos. I need to make and it's, he, and who he is, the questions he has to answer and the constituent service that he has to offer is very different than what is. I don't think he's ever been on a podcast, for example, right? Like it is, it is. And there, like I was saying with grading, there are trade-offs with it. Like, no doubt about it, it is more representative of the electorate to have it in November when more people vote. Yeah. Yes, but it also means that in order to reach those voters, you need to raise and spend more money, and you need to make your message simpler, right? Like the nuance of discussion is gets lost in November because
and there's very little in the way of published information. Like we have no local newspapers. I've said this time and time again. The online guys try hard, but they have to cover a lot of ground. When I was in office, the WAPO had a bureau in Old Town with 3 or 4 full-time staff. Yeah. And we also had the Journal Messenger. So, when I ran for office, I sat for a long interview and it was 2 pages, with a picture over here. And I found it the other day. The picture was humiliating. But
don't even. I gave birth during office, Andy. Don't even talk about bad pictures. Okay, people are looking. So I've lost a lot of weight, and people obviously remark on that. And it's just like you have no idea how motivating it is when you have to take pictures of yourself, regularly. It's just like, oh gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's changed so much. I feel like if we still had local papers, the November elections wouldn't be as bad
as what they are.
But there's not, and it's the primary reason for starting this podcast is to get information out, long form information out to people, because there's just nowhere else to find it. But in order for people to want to come on, you can't pull stunts. You can't do gotcha stuff. Otherwise, everyone's going to look at that and say, well, I'm not going on there. I don't want Harover to, embarrass me in front of the internet.
Yes.
I don't want that. So, I don't do that on purpose. Right. Number one. Number two, I know about a lot of the issues, but at a topical level. So I just, my job is to ask questions like, what about the grading policy? Yeah. Well, let me tell you about the grading policy.
Well, and actually I have been listening to your podcast. I consider it part of my job. I enjoy it, first of all, but I also consider it part of my job to listen to all the podcasts of which I am aware, and to read and subscribe to all of the local.
Stay on top of
it, just so I can stay on top of what people are saying, what's being reported, all that other kind of stuff. And I have noticed, I noted, Andy, that you asked people a lot about the schools, and it does. When I say that, the city felt like it had given up in in 2020. Definitely not Andy Harover, because you're asking. It seems like you ask a lot.
Working with the schools. So at the time that I was in office, I knew a lot of the school board members personally, and I had known them for a long time, some of them. And I was passionate about, I had a kid in the schools, and I was passionate about making them better. And, we went so far as to establish like a joint committee, 2 council members, 2 school board members, and the superintendent and the city manager. And we had meetings to try and come up with ways, strategies to improve the performance of the schools and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the schools, especially the superintendent at the time, felt like the schools are mine and your job is to give us money. Right. And my response to that was more or less, look, we're giving you money, but we want a seat at the table because we're also elected by the same constituents and we want it to work better. Mm-hmm. And I had done some amount of research that showed if you try and turn around like a big city school, it requires the city council and the school board.
It requires a full civic.
Press.
It requires a full press, and that is not just within the body politic, which, these last several election cycles have been painful, but I think has resulted in we're talking about it now, right? And that this is something that has kind of floated to the top instead of Sarah going to vote in 2020 and seeing 3 out of all, and seeing only 3.
But I did want it to work better. Yeah. I did, because it's just something that seemed natural to me. But I think more than anything else, the time just wasn't right.
Right. Well, I mean, and if they're you're talking in 2009, 2010, how much are you really gonna do? And this is something where, and this is part of why I get stuck on the grading policy as not just its policy implications, but also its symbolic implications, right? Sure. Are we going to turn a corner? Are we going to become a board and a system and a city that is united behind the possibility of what our kids can do when we expect it out of them? Because that young man running into the doors of Osborne High School, he is a great example, right? I've never seen a child running to get inside the doors of Osborne High School before we established a set of expectations. And kids will rise to meet it. And there has been so much actually that the schools have done to raise those expectations in other ways, right? There's a whole, I'm not going to bore you with technical things, but there is a whole, we're reforming how we do our instructional our delivery, how we do our teaching, how we expect our teachers to do their planning with a lot of, with data-driven methods that work, right? And so when you see things like 20-point gains in Weems or 30-point gains at Dean and across the board improvement at Hayden, like a lot of it has to do with those kinds of, with raising the bar throughout our system, but raising the bar in parts of our system. But you cannot do it piecemeal. You have to do it all together. You have to be aligned. And one example that I'm going to talk about is that's a good example is attendance, right? Like we have turned a corner, are turning a corner. Like I said, Osborne still has some work to do, but I feel good about it because they have better protocols now. I think we need to change our grading policy, but that's another. But if you look at attendance, right? It's one thing for the school board once a year to look at the attendance data and say, uh-oh, but it's another thing for to have the importance of that permeate throughout the system, so that as families interact with the system from top to bottom, you don't have to watch a school board meeting to know you need to show up to school.
Right.
That you have your child's teacher or the person at the front desk who answers the phone, communicating the importance of attendance. Like I remember going through, I remember going through the back to school night or whatever when my oldest child was in kindergarten. Somebody asked, "Oh, we are leaving on a family trip in October. Is that okay?" And a not aligned system would say, the teacher might say, "Yeah, totally fine. Just let me know when you're gone."
Right.
But a system that is aligned on the importance of attendance will say, "Well, I cannot stop you, but we do discourage things like that. We'll have someone, we'll have our family liaison sit with you with our school calendar. You see these 10 weeks in July and, between June, July, and August. That's really the time you should be, we have 2 weeks in December. That's a great time, know. So to sit with them and to sit with families and educate them. And you can't do that once a year from the dais. That has to be everybody all the time, realizing that attendance is important. And so wherever you interact with the system, you hear the same consistent message. Yeah. And so for our student achievement, our student academic achievement, it's not enough for us to have a meeting a year or two meetings a year to say, we know you can do it, kids, go get them. They have to hear that and experience that every day in every way, every time they are interacting with, in every class that they sit in. I expect you, and I know you can, master the Pythagorean theorem. I know you can. Let's do it. I know you can. It's the difference between, I hear you talk sometimes about your fitness regime, like you with your weighted vest and going to the shop and all this. That's something. I'm a fitness person now too. There is a difference between the reps you do when you're on your own and the reps you do when you have a trainer standing next to you saying, give me 5 more. Yeah. There's a difference in how fast you run when you're running by yourself than if you're being chased, right?
Well, 100%.
It is. And so for us to turn this corner and to really deliver the system that is possible for us to deliver. And I didn't even realize at the time when I was running for school board how weird it was to say that it is possible for us to deliver a better school system for our city, to say that out loud. Everybody thought it, but to say it out loud.
Everyone's got to believe it.
We have to believe it. We have to believe it. We have to do it. So, and I think that we can if we set that bar and communicate it. So it is so that's my my spiel.
Organizational behavior is a weird thing. We for a long time, one of my favorite phrases was people respect what you inspect.
Mm-hmm. So measure what you treasure.
That's it. Same idea. And I think that, I've learned that the hard way. I've been running this business for 25 years. I've learned that the hard way. I just have, I tell you, look, Sarah, you need to have 6.5 hours on your timesheet every day. Mm-hmm. Okay. And if that's the last you hear of it, you know what happens? It drifts down, even if you're doing the work.
Right. Exactly. Like this, how fast do you run on your own? How many reps do you do when you're on your own?
Yeah.
And this is something where, and there's nothing inherent. Focusing on where we need growth is not negative. It's necessary.
Right.
Right. And it is just you're not going to address it if you do not talk about it, which includes in the public square. The public is not going to trust you as a leader if you are not willing to acknowledge the validity of their concerns and not willing to talk concretely about what needs to change. And this is something where, part of what I think has changed culturally about the board as time has gone on and with our new people who've come on is that, I think previously we had a bit of an oversight crisis where the school board was just, okay, you do what you need to do at the administration, which you need to support your administration, but you also need to be prompting your administration. How are you measuring the success of this? Yeah. When are we going to reassess, when are we going to assess whether, what are the goals? How are we assessing whether those goals have been met? Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Which are supportive questions, but also you make them run a little bit faster.
Right.
Do a few more reps for you.
So is there, I know you're passionate about the grading policy. What do you view as sort of like the big things that are coming up?
The big things that are coming up, we're launching an alternative education program. That's big. That's coming up. One thing I actually, this is a hard thing to get excited about, but I think is actually a very necessary thing, is a central registration.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? What a great question. So right now, when you register a new student in Manassas City Public Schools and let's say you have 4 kids, you might need to go to 4 different schools, depending on the ages of the kids to do it.
Oh, wow.
To register them at Osborne, to register them at Metz, to register them at Mayfield, to register them at Dean or wherever it is that you live.
Right.
And it is difficult on our families to do that. And a lot, things get lost in the crossfire. There is an additional There's an additional issue with our students who speak another language other than English at home.
Sure.
There is an additional registration process that they have to go through in terms of getting assessed for their English language level and figuring out when did you how long have you been here and what needs do you have and how can we serve you.
Right. So streamlining all of that. And right now, especially for our L students, our English language learner students, the paperwork is being done by our ESOL teachers, which takes time away from what they should be doing, which is working with students. And so it is actually something that is, it's a very a wonky answer to give. But I mean, that's a good idea.
Yeah. To remove that administrative burden from our teachers and put it all in one place. Everybody else does it this way, right? That's how Prince William calls it their global welcome center, right? It is, but it's something where our teachers need to be spending their time teaching.
Yeah.
And it is not like the, hottest thing alive to say, well, we need to hire more registrars or
it's not exciting
or reorganize our registrars. I don't know if we would need to hire anybody. I don't know if there would need to be headcount associated with it, but reorganize our registrars. It's like, oh yeah, vote for me for school board. Reorganize the registrars.
Yeah, it's hard to fit on a poster.
It's hard to put that on a poster, but it's something that I think would be impactful.
I mean, no one's arguing against efficiency.
Yeah. Another thing that is rolling out in Manassas City schools that I think everyone is excited about, but I can only speak for myself, is that we finally, in the year 2025, have our quote unquote tier 1 expectations rolling out, which is jargony, and I'll explain it. We have lacked a division-wide set of positive behavioral expectations for our students. It has been kind of a school-based, kind of haphazard situation where it has not been really well, thoroughly, and systemically communicated. And this year we are rolling out for the first time a division-wide set of positive behavioral expectations that we expect out of everyone at every school, every level, all the time. And there's a whole rollout plan in terms of it's not going to happen this year, but next year we're going to have a set. I don't know if it's next year. I'll have to go back and visit the presentation for the exact timeline. But there will be at some point in the future, students who commit minor infractions, division-wide, how are we expected to handle that? Students who commit major infractions, division-wide, how are we expected to handle that? And it is just a systemic,
it seems like a good idea.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is. And this is something where I think in our previous, I think that there was a little bit of a shock and a bit of an arrested development in the early 2000s as all of this happened. And the wind, as you say, came out of all the sails and the boat has just been drifting. It's just okay, there is, we need to put the wind back in and do all these things a little bit all at once that have been that other school divisions that didn't experience this big shock have been rolling out gradually over the past decades or so to try to do that, catch up and make it happen. Because it is possible. It is possible for our kids to behave well. It is possible for our kids to perform well. And I can tell you a little also anecdote in terms of I hear often people talk about, you have so many students who don't speak English. What can you expect? This population we serve, what can you expect? Andy, if I may ask you a question, are you familiar with Title I?
I am.
So how many Title I schools do you think we have?
All of them.
Incorrect.
Oh.
That is incorrect.
Good thing I'm not on the school board.
The only schools that are Title I in Manassas City Public Schools are our elementary schools.
Okay.
There is a pervasive misunderstanding about the students that we serve here. There is...
In my defense, that's most of them.
Well, I mean, and it is, there's also, and people are sometimes surprised to hear that, but if you think about it, your income grows over time. So I was, you were making less money when your daughter was in second grade versus how much money you were making in 2015 when she or hopefully, life takes turns. But, in general, your income grows as kids get older. And so there is this misunderstanding that we are this like, quote unquote, all Title I system where, oh gosh, our kids are just, in this hopeless state, which first of all, kids from low-income backgrounds can learn too. So I kind of reject the premise out of hand. But even if I accept the premise that has been articulated so often in our city's civic life, it's not even true.
I mean, I think that when I was doing research on this, it was a thing that incomes kind of dictated educational outcomes, but it doesn't mean I was in love with that idea or I necessarily even thought it was true.
Right.
But it got the schools back then. I don't know which ones were Title I, all of them I don't remember, but there were some for sure. Mm-hmm. And it does. It's these numbers may be dated, but it's about 30% more expensive to educate a kid who can't speak English.
Well, yes, because you need
more staff. You need more people.
Staff.
You got to teach them
trained in a particular way to do that.
Yeah, it's a thing.
People misunderstand.
And this has been a struggle for our community, but I'll tell you, I think that I feel like we're kind of coming out of the other end of that, and I treasure those communities. I really do. Mm-hmm. The people that like Meg over in Georgetown South. I mean, she's iconic over there, right?
Icon, yes, icon.
And La Jarojita and the little food truck. I never remember the name of that place. Yeah, but you have to. And some days it helps if you can speak a little Spanish to go in there and order.
Yeah.
But I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were over that way, and he looked at the little, the Georgetown South strip mall and said, I wonder when that's going to be redeveloped. And the idea shocked me because I was kind of like, I think this is fantastic.
I know, and it has a sense of place.
It does.
It
does. I mean,
it's not the prettiest, aesthetically, but that's not what matters. What matters is the community that is built around.
Yeah, and we have lots of. I mean, you can say, well, I don't know, I don't want to go to this Mexican place, and I don't mean Mexican generically. I mean Mexican. Mm-hmm. Well, can we go to the Guatemalan place? And there's one here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
I treasure that community.
I mean, like I said, Manassas, I fell in love with it right away. Everything inside the Beltway has this like sanitized conformity to it where, that's hard to put your finger quite on it, but you come out here and you come here, right here, which is home, my home, our home, and it is, you have everybody here. You have a big time former lawyer for the National Electric Regional blah blah blah. You have
just ask him.
Blah blah blah.
All right,
I hope you're listening, Rich. And but you also have your local landscape company, and we're all here at the we're all here going to the same food trucks and going to the same festivals. There's a beautiful vibrancy here, and I think we could really take off as a city if we get ourselves together in the schools, and I really think it's happening. I really do. I think this is a very exciting moment for us. Now, if only we could change that grading policy.
Yeah. Well, and I think it would help more dialogue and not less, right? Mm-hmm. I'd love to have every elected official come through here. I think that you get to, like, even some of these guys like Tim. I've known Tim since like about 1980. Mm-hmm. And, I still learned some stuff about him as it relates to his role in his current elected position. Mm-hmm. But then I also had Dion.
Yeah.
And I did not know him. I learned a lot about him. Yeah. And I think that people...
Me too. I learned a lot about him too.
Yeah, but people that listen, they learn about these guys. And you got to invest an hour and a half. Listen to it at 1.5 times, right?
Yes.
So it goes by a little faster. But I think that you can learn a lot about this stuff.
Yes.
Because you just can't cover the nuance of all of these things in, a 750-word column.
I know. I'm going to have to go in just a minute or two, and I feel like we're still so much to talk about. I feel like in a way we're cutting this conversation short. But
well, you're welcome to come back.
You do have I'll say, let me just state for the record that Andy had asked me to come on this podcast over the summer.
Yeah.
And I said, Andy, my children are home.
Right. I'm busy.
You have to ask me during the school year.
Yeah.
But the school day does end at 3:35, and it is currently 3:25. So.
All right. Well, hey, look, thanks for coming on. I really enjoyed it. And, if you want to come back or if something is going on and you want to talk about it, just let me know.
All right.
All right. Thank you.